Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Rocket Chiro Podcast, a business and marketing podcast for chiropractors. My name is Jerry. I'm your host. I'm a former chiropractor. I help chiropractors now with websites and local SEO. I help new chiropractors get started. I help frustrated chiropractors get unstuck. And I host this little podcast. Today we're going to talk about freaking out over things unnecessarily. We're going to talk about the ups and downs, the roller coaster that goes along with being a chiropractor, owning your own practice, owning your own small business, and just going to give you a few tips on how to handle those things and how to better discern whether what you're going through is in fact a crisis and needs to be addressed, or if it's just something that you just need to be calm with, okay with, and handle maybe in a little bit better way. Now, before I get into that, I do want to remind you, if you would like me to look at your website and SEO and give you an evaluation of how it looks, how you're doing, how you compare to other chiropractors in your area, I'd be happy to do that free of charge. If you go to Rocket Chiro and request a free website and SEO review, I'll be happy to look at it. I'll send you a custom video. It'll be filled full of information, probably more information than you ever care to know. And I will let you know some things that you could do to improve your situation, and I'll let you know if I can help you or not. If you are wanting a better chiropractic website, or if you're wanting help with your local SEO, reach out to me through Rocket Chiro. And if you want to go beyond this podcast, where you like the podcast, you like the information, but you want to go a little bit deeper, you want some access to me, you want some help along the way, check out my Next Step program. It's a month-to-month program. You get access to some additional trainings. You get access to me. It's just a really great way to get unstuck or get started if you're getting started as a chiropractor and you want to go beyond the podcast. All right, so I get asked a lot of questions by chiropractors, and many times my answers to questions that I'm being asked involves me educating people about the thing they're talking about, because sometimes people are just freaking out over nothing. And some of this is just because you don't know what you don't know. Some of it is because people just haven't developed better habits or better patterns. And so I think that it's better if we just all figure out ways to handle this thing, which is being a small business owner, which a lot of us most people didn't become a chiropractor to become a small business owner. Let's just be honest. And because of that, most chiropractors would just prefer seeing patients and going home and not worrying about it. But that's not the reality. The reality is you have this other thing that you have to deal with, which is paying bills and doing marketing and managing clients and managing staff. And it's just sort of the headache that goes along with being a chiropractor for most chiropractors. And when you ride the ups and downs without any sort of plan, without any sort of discernment, knowing like what's normal and what's not, it's incredibly emotionally draining. And ultimately it leads to bad decision making, because if you are freaking out about something that you shouldn't be freaking out about, you might change something that you shouldn't change. You may keep doing something that you shouldn't keep doing. Like the process that you're going to go through making a decision is never going to be as good if you are emotionally stressed out. And so keeping yourself level and calm and making decisions in a non-emotional way is going to be long-term just the best way to handle your practice. And I know that that's easier said than done, but what that sounds like when in terms of like people reaching out to me and asking for help or talking to me is they'll say, they'll look at their search engine optimization, and oftentimes I don't even know how they're checking it. They're probably just checking it on their own browser, which is not a great way of checking your local SEO. But they'll say, hey, I was first last week and now I'm fifth. I was third last week and now I'm 10th. Like, what happened? I was fifth last night and I checked it this morning and now I'm 10th, and they're freaking out like something is terribly wrong with their SEO. Somebody could be saying like, I'm having a really slow month and if I keep this up, I'm going to go bankrupt. Well, that's a big jump. Like, I mean, it's true. And I'm not saying that any of this stuff is untrue, but it's entirely possible that it's not quite as bad as what you think. And you might be jumping to a catastrophic explanation as to what's going on, when there may not be a catastrophic explanation as to what's going on. Oftentimes people will say, XYZ marketing used to work and now it's not working anymore. Now, the flip side of that would be, if we're riding the highs, we would say XYZ marketing is working great now. I don't have to worry about it anymore. My ads were running great now I have new patients. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I got a bunch of patients from Google. My SEO is doing great. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's sort of the process that people go through when they're just taking what's happening in the moment and making a long-term decision based on what's happening right here in this moment, instead of stepping back. And it's sort of the classic, you can't see the forest for the trees. And we're going to talk about what are just some things that you can do, some habits that you can put in place to avoid riding these ups and downs. Two things that come to mind in terms of, just before we kind of get into the tips here, is number one is something that I hear a lot is expectations minus reality equals disappointment. And I think that that's the case. Sometimes we have these expectations that sometimes we just make them up. Like, we just pull them out of the air. Sometimes they're from somebody else. Like, you'll hear someone on a different podcast, or you'll hear someone at a seminar, and they're just going to tell you how amazing and great and how easy it is to be a chiropractor. And you have this expectation, and then reality hits. And the difference between expectations and reality just leads to a tremendous amount of stress and frustration. The other thing that reminds me of as I talk about this is that I had a conversation with my chiropractor. It's been several years ago now. He's a very successful chiropractor. He's been practicing for a very long time. I say very long time. He probably would not like me saying a very long time, because that makes him sound like he's 100 years old. But he was out and had been out for 8-10 years before I got out, and I got out like 25 years ago. So it's been a minute. And he's been successful for a long time now. And I remember having a conversation with him a few years ago where I was in there and I was getting adjusted, and I had asked him, like, hey, how are things? Like, how's practice going? And he said, yeah, it's been a little slow, but that's just how it is. And he had made the comment that a lot of young docs get frustrated because they think they're going to get to a point where they don't have a good month or a bad month. Like, they don't have those ups and downs. And the key really to having a successful business, and this is true for all small business, is that you're always going to have some months that are better than others. You're always going to have those dips at times. And that might be a cause for concern. It might not be. Those dips in a perfect world happen above the point where you are paying your bills and putting food on your table. And that's really when you have become successful as a chiropractor. And this is also one of the reasons that I'm such an advocate for kind of the low overhead micro practice model, is because if you're trying to get those ups and downs above the point where your overhead is and you're paying yourself and everything else, one of the ways that you can stack the deck in your favor is to not have a high bar. Like, don't have a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of overhead. If you're going to realize that wave of income is going to be happening at the top, it's like, well, if your bar for being able to pay yourself and survive and everything else is, a few $1,000s instead of $15,000 or $20,000, you're putting yourself in a much more advantageous position. Now, we talked about on a podcast recently, what are the downsides of the micro practice? So I'm not saying that that's like the only way to practice, and if you don't do that, you're crazy. I'm just saying that the ups and downs of practice is the same thing my chiropractor told me, and it's true. So I'm going to share it with you guys. The ups and downs are going to happen no matter if you've been in practice for 30 years or 30 minutes. The difference is when you've been in practice for 30 minutes, those ups and downs are taking food off of your table. When you've been in practice for 30 years, hopefully, it would be frustrating if that wasn't the case, but hopefully the ups and downs are happening well above what you need to pay your bills, pay your family, and be okay. So let's kind of talk about what are some things that you should do. This is not in any particular order. These are just the things that I thought of when I was thinking about this and kind of the emotional stress that we put ourselves under as chiropractors and small business owners. Here's some good habits to have. Number one is to keep track of your stats. This may seem very obvious, but I say it just because when I first started my practice, I was really a fly by the seat of my pants person. I was just like, hey, if there's money in the bank, I'm good. If there's not money in the bank, I'm bad. It's like, if people are coming in, that's good. If people aren't coming in, that's bad. Like, I had a very sloppy approach to keeping track of stats. And what stats you keep a track of are going to be dependent on the type of person you are. I mean, things like new patients, your income, patient visits, like those are some basic things. If you're a very, very particular person, you really nerd out on stats, you may get really, really detailed. And this is true for particular marketing too. Like, when it comes to marketing, we could boil it down into how much money I'm paying, how much money am I paying for the marketing, and how many new patients that I get from that. That's sort of the simple way of doing it. But if the more complex way of doing it, if you're kind of a stat nerd, is like, well, what's my click-through rate? Like how many, what's my landing page efficiency? What you can get into all of that stuff. I'm not telling you how detailed you have to be with your stats, especially since I tend to be less detailed when it comes to stats and I focus on the big picture. I'm just saying you have to keep track of it. There's no way that a sane, successful small business owner would be functioning in a world where they're counting on their feelings to determine whether they're doing well or not, or whether their business is heading in the right direction. Don't do that. I did that in the past. I was not successful when I was doing that. That's not a successful way to run a practice. You got to keep track of your stats. Number 2 is be specific. And what I mean by be specific is when you say something is wrong, be clear about what do you mean by that? Like people get a hold of me and they'll say, well, I used to run Google ads, but the Google ads stopped working. Well, what part of them stopped working? Did they stop showing? Did the cost per click get too high? Was people going to your landing page, but they weren't scheduling an appointment? Were the ads like nobody's clicking on them? Like what does that mean that they weren't working? Because I said like, hey, you could keep it simple and say, how much money am I spending and how many new patients I'm getting? That's fine. But if you have a problem with that mechanism, you have to be more specific than that. When you're troubleshooting, it's like saying like, well, my practice is slow. Okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that you don't have any new patients coming in? Does that mean your patient visit volume for that month is low? Does it mean that your patient volume was perfectly fine, your new patient numbers were fine, but your money was low because you're waiting for insurance to come in and it hasn't come in? What does that mean? So when you're saying that I have a problem, or you're feeling like you have a problem, or you're thinking you have a problem, be specific. What is the problem exactly? And the more specific you are, the more likely you're going to be able to troubleshoot that in an effective way. Number 3 is just look for trends. Trends are really important in a football world. Like the football season just started a couple weeks ago. Go Bills. And one of the things that you'll hear is that, 1 game's a fluke, 2 games is concerning, and 3 games is a trend. It's a pattern. And, this is the way it is with your practice as well. 1 month is kind of a fluke. Like you may have a good month, you may have a bad month. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. 2 months, it's like, okay, there's something there. And this is true for success and failure. If you're 3 months into it and you're seeing like bad news, you're starting to see a trend. And that's the thing. Those are the things that you want to pay attention to. When I do SEO for my clients, I'm checking keywords. If I see one scan that doesn't look as good as the one before, like it doesn't really mean anything to me. I look at it and say, well, what time of day, were they open or closed? Like what's going on with everybody else? Like what is, I try to figure out like, hey, what is that thing? But then if I do another scan 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and we see that it's up, it's like it was at let's say we were ranking at a 5, and then we went down to an 8, and then we went up to a 4. It's like, well, all right, we're trending in the right direction. If I see a 5 and then it goes to 8 and then it goes to 10 and then it goes to 12, we are trending in the wrong direction. And you do see that occasionally. Like I've had clients that do that where we're working on their SEO, we're doing stuff and everything was great. All of a sudden the bottom falls out and we really have to dig into it and figure out what in the world happened last August. What happened last October? Like what happened in February that changed everything, and try to solve those problems. But you really only come to the conclusion that we need to address this more seriously when we've seen that there's actual pattern. And this is also true for success as well. It's like when you're doing really, really well, you have 1 month that's going well. You don't really base everything on that 1 month. It's like, are you seeing a trend in the right direction after a second month, after a third month, after a 6 month, after a year? That's what you want to see. So look for trends instead of looking for random things that may or may not be significant. Number 4 is compare things to the past. This is obviously hard when you're first getting started because you have no past, but the sooner you start keeping track of stats, the sooner you can see patterns that develop throughout the course of a year. And what you'll tend to see in chiropractic practice, and I imagine this is the case with other small businesses, is that there are going to be months that are slower than others. Like February was always a stinker in my practice, and I have some theories as to why that is, but February always sucked. Like December and February there were 2 months for me that were consistently bad no matter what I did. I just sort of wanted to punt on both months. And then the rest of the months seemed to be pretty good. Other people have different patterns. Other people have different waves that happen throughout their year. But you don't want to be in a low point. Maybe it's the summertime and people are taking vacations and whatever. And you look at that and you're comparing summertime to, May or March, when maybe that was like normally a really, really good month for you. Like that's not fair. That's not fair to summertime stats. So make sure that you're comparing to the past. Like what does this December look like compared to last December and the December before? Like what does this July look like last July and the July before? That's going to be helpful. Like I said, when you're first getting started, you really can't do that. But the sooner you keep track of your stats, the sooner you'll be able to do that. And it is super helpful. It helps you kind of ease your mind. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to improve that February or that December or whatever that stinky month is for you. But just also keep it in perspective. And we're talking about not freaking out unnecessarily. This kind of helps you not freak out unnecessarily. Number 5 is have a plan. You can't evaluate your process without a plan. And this is also sort of goes along with tracking the stats. But if you have a plan for getting new patients, if you have a plan for onboarding people, if you have a plan for trying to, what's your retention process? What's your thought process there for short-term, long-term retention? And I know this sounds really nerdy and kind of get into a bunch of like, it's almost like over planning, but if you don't have a plan, there's a quality control problem and there's no way of evaluating how the thing is that you're doing is doing. And so if every single time you onboard someone, you're doing it differently, and every single time somebody in your staff answers the phone, they're doing it differently. And every single time somebody's a reeval, you're doing it differently. And every single time someone, you do marketing, you're doing it differently. That's a really terrible way to figure out what's wrong and what's actually going on. You can't look at trends without consistency. And so just make sure that you have a plan. Number 6 is just focus on good habits first and results second. You're going to have good habits and a good plan and a good execution before you have good results. Now, hopefully good habits equal good results. But if you don't have good habits, looking for good results without good habits is sort of doing things backwards. So in the beginning, you don't necessarily want to, like SEO is a good example of this. You could be doing everything you're supposed to be doing from a search engine standpoint, and there are reasons why you may not see results right away. That doesn't mean that the things that you're doing, the good habits that you're doing, are in vain. Now, there does come a point where you could come to the conclusion, because once again, if you've seen a trend where it's like, we've been doing these good habits, these things that we think are best. We've been doing them for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and we're still not seeing the results that we want to see. You very well could come to the conclusion that the good habits that you have and the good plan that you have put in place isn't working well. That's fine, but that's because you have started with the good habits. You've evaluated it because you've seen a trend of this is not getting the results we want. What you don't want to do is not have good habits, not have a plan, and be looking for good results and then chasing like the waves that are going to happen without the structure. Like that's just a crazy thing to do without the habits. Next, make sure you're always remembering cause and effect. These sort of overlap a little bit, but the thing that you want to keep in mind when you're stressing out about something is when you're saying like, I want to get more new patients in the door. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing to get new patients in the door? If you're sort of assuming that people are going to get it, that's not a good way to go about doing business and doing marketing, doing practice. And so one of the things I'll say from a marketing standpoint is the beginning of all marketing is introducing yourself to people who don't already know you. So what should be happening on a regular basis, there needs to be some sort of mechanism for your practice to be introducing itself to new people every single month. I'm not saying those people are going to become patients, but it's sort of the nature of it. Like you can't ever expect to get more new patients that are coming in if you stop introducing yourself to new people. Now there's going to be the people that know you that haven't come in yet that are going to come in, but eventually the well dries up. There has to be people that are finding out about you this month and next month and the month after who didn't know you exist prior to that. And so if that's the case, my question would be for anyone who has you're really, really frustrated with your new patient process, is let's start at the beginning and say, what are you doing that's doing that? Because if you're not doing that, you're sort of removing cause and effect. You're saying, well, I'm posting online. Okay, well, if that posting online is not reaching more people, you're expecting an effect from a cause that doesn't cause the effect. I know that sounds super stupid. That's like a dumb way of saying it. But there's a disconnect between cause and effect. You can't just say like, well, I'm going to post online and that's going to give me new patients. What's the process? What's the thought process? What is that posting online supposed to be doing? And what is it actually doing? So just don't remove cause from effect. Like, don't remove the mistakes you make from the bad results that you get. Don't remove the things you're not doing from the results you're not getting, because people do that all the time. They want an effect. They want a result, but they haven't really narrowed down, like, what are the things that I'm doing that should be resulting in that result that I want? Man, that was a complicated way of saying it. Just don't remove cause and effect. If you want something to happen, be doing something that's supposed to cause that. And don't do the things that's not going to cause it. Pretty straightforward. All right, 2 more. Don't overcommit to your plan. You don't have to marry your plan. It's not good times and bad till death do us part. If you want to make God laugh, show him your plans. You could have the best plan in the world and life just kicks you in the pants. It's okay to change your plan. It really is. It's not okay to change your plans every 5 minutes, because at that point you have no baseline. You have no idea if what you're doing is working. You're being impatient. I've had people like that that have gone through like coaching with me or gone through Next Step, where I could just tell that they're the type of person that's just jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. I've had a guy that I talked to years ago, and I just told him, I said, hey man, cause he joined my stuff and then he left right away. And I could just tell from conversations that we had that this guy jumps around a lot. And I just said, hey man, try to, next time you do something, just stick with it. Like, I don't care if you do my stuff. It doesn't matter to me, but just stick with it. Like, sit in it a little bit, like try to develop a level of expertise and a level of competency with one approach, then try to change it, then try to modify it, like establish a baseline. So there's 2 kind of sides of it. The one side is the person who's kind of jumping around too much. The flip side of it is someone who says like, I'm going to be famous online doing blah, blah, blah. And they have they ignore the stats, they ignore the results, they ignore what they're getting. And they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, because it's like they have faith or something like that. Like, those are the 2 extremes. And both of them are wrong. Like, you don't want to jump around too much, and you also don't want to overcommit to your plan. I don't think I've ever actually achieved any progress the exact way that I thought I was going to when I started. I don't think that's ever happened. And even the stuff that I do now with Rocket Chiro, like, I wasn't planning on doing Rocket Chiro. I mean, what used to be Black Sheep DC, like, I was not going to do this. When I closed my practice, I had multiple people that tell me that I should start working with chiropractors in different capacities. And even people that I consider mentors of mine, people that I really appreciate their point of view and their perspective, they were saying, this is the most value that you have to offer to people, is helping chiropractors get started, helping them with their marketing, like the stuff that I do now. And my wife told me years before I started doing websites for chiropractors that I should do websites for chiropractors. And I didn't listen to anybody. And so the crazy thing is that I was so overcommitted to my plan at that time that I ended up hindering my growth and progress, because I was so sure that it was going to work. Like, it was going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. And I have suffered in my own life because I tend to be someone who overcommits to a plan. Like, that's the plan. I'm going to do it. I'm going to stick through it. I'm going to suffer. Like, I've done that a lot. And it's sort of a silly thing to do to yourself. Don't jump around too much. Don't overcommit. Look for trends, look for patterns, look for opportunities, and look for ways to change what you're doing, because most likely your success is going to happen in a direction, in a path that is not exactly what you thought it was going to be from the beginning. Like that would be pretty unusual that someone has their success completely mapped out. If you go back in time, like go back in time 10 years and imagine what 10 years ago you would have said that what's best or how your life's going to go or decisions you're going to make or how this is all going to work out. Even 10 years ago, you can look back and be like, that person was an idiot. They didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't know that this, and this was going to happen. And so don't be overcommitted to your plan. Last thing I'm going to say is this, and we'll wrap this up. Just seek outside help. And I do not mean the peanut gallery. Like I do not like the peanut gallery, asking your followers or asking some rando chiropractic group of people that are just idiots, like asking them for their 2 cents. I'm not a big fan of that. I am a big fan of having a mentor, having a friend, having people that are close to you. They're going to tell you the truth, be honest with you, people that you respect, people that you admire. I'm a big fan of standing on the shoulders of giants. I am not a big fan of asking the peanut gallery for advice, because oftentimes the people that are most ready to give you advice in these open forums are the people that are least qualified to be giving you advice. It's like, oh my gosh, these people should shut up, because some people just like hearing themselves talk. And I know that's kind of an ironic thing from someone who has a podcast. Like some people just like hearing themselves talk. I get it. I understand the irony of it. But if I'm just the peanut gallery person to you, then who cares? Like, who cares what I have to say? Really? Like, it doesn't matter. But the people who listen to me and the people who benefit from what I'm telling them, I'm in a mentor type position for them. I'm not a giant, but I'm ahead of a lot of people that are listening to me. I'm ahead of most of the people that are listening to me in terms of my knowledge and understanding of how some of these things work. It's okay to stand on the shoulders of giants. It's okay to ask advice and help from people that are ahead of you. You should be doing that. And that could be reading books. It could be watching videos. It could be whatever. So be willing to ask for help. Just don't ask from the peanut gallery. Like if you don't know the person that's giving you the advice well enough to know whether they're an idiot or not, I'd be cautious. Be cautious about that, because we live in a world where everyone's got an opinion and they think it matters, and it doesn't. Especially now when it's your success and your failure and your frustration that you're hanging on someone's opinion who's could very well be an idiot and a failure in their own right. But they got a nice car. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. If you know a chiropractor who would benefit from the podcast, please share it with them, because this podcast is small and it's not a big deal. If you would like some help with your website, local SEO, or you want to go beyond the podcast with some additional information and reach out, you can reach out to me through Rocket Chiro for all of that. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for the regulars. I'm out of here. I'll shut up. Talk to you later. See ya.